Tossing and turning at night? Waking up exhausted? We've all been there. Sounds like it's time to try the melatonin-free CBD sleep gummies from Cornbread Hemp. Cornbread Hemp produces America's first USDA organic, melatonin-free CBD gummy. Fall asleep and stay asleep with CBD sleep gummies that are infused with full-spectrum, flower-only hemp extract and include natural botanicals like valerian root, lavender, and chamomile. They're vegan, gluten-free, and made without a sugar coating. Just clean, natural ingredients. Right now, Cornbread Hemp is offering 30% off your first order. Just go to cornbreadhemp.com/whatnext and use code WhatNext at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/whatnext, code WhatNext for 30% off.
Doug.
Limu and I always tell you to customize your car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. But now, we want you to feel it. Cue the emu music, Limu.
Save yourself money today. Increase your wealth. Customize and save, we say.
That may have been too much feeling.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
Heads up. Today's conversation is a really straightforward one about the circumstances on the ground in Gaza, including what it's like in Gaza's emergency departments. Like a lot of medical professionals, our guest does not mince words, even when he's talking about gruesome injuries, even to kids. We think it's important you listen anyway. Dr. Adil Khalil does not like formality. He's an orthopedic surgeon, lives in Texas. When he's in the OR, he's usually listening to rap, like Run the Jewels. And no one calls him doctor. For the most part, they call him Khalil. This part of his personality, he says, it made it easier for him to adjust when he started volunteering in Gaza.
It's a very family-type environment, I think, where everyone knows each other.
Adil is Pakistani-American, but 2 years into the war, he's learned how to curse in Arabic. And at the hospital, he even got a nickname.
Like, I guess in Arab culture, a lot of times they call you by your first kid's name. Like, so my name is Adil, but then they would say, like, what's your kid's name? And so my son's name is Kareem. So they'd be like, they call me Abu Kareem.
Abu means dad?
Yeah. Like in Gaza, we're all family.
Adil has been to Gaza 3 times since October 7th, 2023, which is why I called him. He's seen the circumstances evolve. A month after his last visit, he speaks about what he saw in these staccato bursts, like it's impossible to keep what he's seen to himself, but equally hard to share it. Everyone he met had lost someone.
The last case that we were in on was our nurse anesthetist, this sweetest lady. Like she was very somber. And I walked into the room and it was actually her husband who had been shot in the head at an aid distribution site.
Oh my gosh.
They were picking pieces of skull out of his head and he was bleeding in his mouth. And
they all knew this man.
Yeah, they all knew him very closely. That's a common theme.
And he died?
He died, yeah. That's the thing. Like, everyone knows that these aid distribution sites, they would describe them as killing fields, and they would encourage people not to go. But there's such desperation, and the people in the family that are mobile feel compelled to go try to retrieve food for the rest of the family. And so I think, when she was at work, he decided he was going to go try to get some aid, and he got shot in the head.
The last time he visited, Adil was in Gaza City. In the weeks since, Israeli ground troops have invaded there. And the UN has said these troops are committing a genocide.
Israel's defense minister is saying that Gaza is burning as the IDF ramps up its bombing campaign across Gaza City. There are images taken from the Israel-Gaza border, and it shows plumes of smoke rising above the city.
A determination today from the UN Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory that Israel is committing genocide. Israel's foreign ministry immediately calling it distorted and false, saying the 3-member panel was working as a Hamas proxy, repeating Hamas lies.
Are you hearing from your colleagues in Gaza now?
Yeah.
What are they telling you?
That it just keeps getting worse. I mean, I think, having been there 3 times, that's the part that's really disheartening. I don't think anybody expected this to go on this long. And I think this last time, there's definitely this sense that we're in the end game.
Today on the show, what the end game looks like in Gaza, in the hospitals, on the ground. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
Well, I was down on my last dollar and then I started saving because the bank said fiscal restraint is what you're craving. So I put my earnings in a high yield account. Let the savings compound and the interest mount. I'm optimizing cash flow, putting debt in check now. Time is my friend and not a pain in the neck. And we've got a little cash to rebuild the old deck.
Boring money moves make kind of lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. With the weather getting cooler, if you're like me, you're looking around for a couple of new items for your wardrobe, like a new sweater, some cute new kicks. And Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I went over to Saks.com to check out what they've got on tap, and I gotta say, what I love about clicking around their website is that every piece looks special, one of a kind. As if you'd walk into the office or a party and instantly grab everyone's attention. All the big brands are there, stuff like Alice and Olivia, the young and trendy stuff. I love that I can see the care in every piece Saks has chosen for their fall collections. Each dress or pant or shoe feels a little bit elevated. So if you want shopping to be fun and easy, head over to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day. Adil's first trip to Gaza was back in April of 2024. Back then, he was working out of what's called the European Hospital near Khan Yunis. That's in Gaza's south. He entered through Egypt. He felt lucky to get in at all.
It was very unpredictable. It was unknown. The dates changed many times. And finally, it was like April of 24 when we finally got the first mission solidified. There were about 15 of us on the trip, give or take, and it was a very different experience in terms of being able to bring things in.
Yeah, what did you bring with you?
So we kind of got word from people there of what was needed. So we were able to bring, some medical equipment, a bunch of scrub techs that I know gathered equipment from different hospitals. We got donations from the hospitals that we work at and packed a bunch of suitcases.
I read it was 90 suitcases.
Yeah, for the whole group.
So like a minibus full of suitcases.
Exactly. So one of the guys on our team had been to Gaza in the summer of 2023, so he already had contacts there in the hospitals, and so he was able to ask what was needed. So we got some basic surgical supplies and stuff like that, airway stuff, ultrasounds to try to do fast exams in the ER. But then when we got to Cairo, we actually got delayed a few days because once you show up, you don't know until 24 hours before you roll in if you actually got approved by Kogat, which is the wing of the Israeli military that controls movement within Gaza. And so they don't give you a green light until right before you go in.
So you're sitting there at a hotel or something with like a million suitcases and waiting?
Yeah, so it actually worked out well. We used that time to kind of organize the equipment. And then finally, 2 days late, we got the green light to go in. And then when we went into Gaza, it was mind-blowing how many aid trucks were parked outside the border. It had to be thousands and thousands of aid trucks that were just not allowed in. Because the physician teams could go through the Egyptian side of the Rafah border, the aid trucks would have to go through the Israeli side. And I think the Israeli side, there was a lot of, they had to check and make sure the trucks were cleared. Certain things would be termed dual use, where they could be used as weapons as well, I guess. But for some reason, ultrasound probes were part of that dual use classification. So a lot of things were very, it was shocking how many trucks we passed by with aid that would have been helpful just a few hundred feet into Gaza, but they were just parked outside the border.
Adil's team was supposed to be staying at a safe house nearby, but things did not work out that way.
Eventually, on that trip, like a few days in, we realized that it was a waste of time to keep going between the safe house and the hospital, because when you move within Gaza, you have to apply for a green light from Kogat just to move.
So you just stayed at the hospital?
Yeah, so then we ended up just staying at the hospital.
Huh.
Because it would literally waste 2 hours sometimes just trying to get between the safe house to the hospital. Plus, we found out a few days in that the safe house coordinates were wrong. And so we actually lost water to the safe house because a bullet had gone through the water tank on the roof.
Yeah, not very safe for a safe house.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're staying at the hospital. What are you seeing that first time around? Like, what is the area around the hospital like? What is life like inside the hospital itself?
So it was incredibly chaotic. So I think people still, even though there were already hospitals that had been attacked, the general thought among the people was we're safer at the hospital than in a tent outside of like in in the common areas.
So people were coming to the hospital.
Yeah, and living there. So there were like 35,000 refugees living on the campus of the hospital while we were there.
Whoa.
And it was just incredibly chaotic. Like there were tents that people had kind of propped up, but basically just hanging up a sheet against the ceiling tiles or off the ceiling tiles. And people were making little living quarters even in the corner of the stairwell. When you walked through a hall, there was a narrow pathway you could take. And on either side, people had put up sheets to basically live in as a family. And the amount of kids, on the hospital grounds was insane. I mean, that's where we realized one of the best things you could do was fill your pockets with candy, because you could just give kids some candy. And that was incredibly satisfying for us just to give some kids some candy because they were so appreciative. But there were kids running around the entire hospital.
A side effect of having all these people was that the hospital infrastructure got totally overwhelmed.
The internet was very hard because it was overloaded. The sewage system was not working really well. So there was actually like a sewage leak in the x-ray room. So x-ray went down once for a little while because there was a leak in the x-ray room and they weren't able to do x-rays for a couple of days. And, it's just like the infrastructure of the ceiling tiles were falling off just because, people were hanging tents off of them. And then when you walk down to the hospital courtyard, they had managed on the banister of the external stairwell, people had tied so many ropes off going in different directions to hang sheets to serve as like makeshift tents. And it was just kind of a symbol of the ingenuity there. Like, I mean, they just used this external stairwell banister for support for so many tents throughout the hospital courtyard. And people were living their lives out there. I mean, like I remember, we were there for Ramadan. So right before Eid, we saw the barbers out there on the sidewalk within the hospital doing haircuts and stuff for Eid, just trying to live their life for this, and try their best to enjoy this religious holiday, even though they're displaced on a hospital campus.
Who were you treating while you were there?
There were a mixture of blast injuries, but mostly gunshot wounds. I think in that area at that time, there were a lot of sniper shots, the large caliber bullets. A lot of parents would express that their kids were playing and a bullet came out of nowhere.
Their children were shot?
A lot of children. Yeah. So honestly, that was one of the striking things. It had already been 6 months into this conflict. And the amount of children was probably one of the most shocking things that hit us.
Did it seem to be stray bullets that weren't hitting their mark and accidentally found the children?
Unfortunately, they seemed to be targeted shots because we were seeing double shots, where somebody was hit in the neck and in the chest, or in the head and in the chest. And these are little kids, like, preteen children that were shot in the head and chest. And I don't think you can do that as a stray bullet. But all of us on our phones have these pictures that we took of, from the x-rays where you have these bullets like in a kid's neck or in their head, in their chest. So that was one of the most striking things that we treated. We were still treating a number of amputations. There were blast injuries that were happening, kids that lost their limbs.
You're a dad.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm a parent. When you see kids who are like your kid's age, you sometimes just kind of stare at them.
Oh like, my God. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have moments like that?
A ton. Yeah. I mean, I am not an emotional guy. Generally, like, when we're in the operating room, we're just hyper focused on the problem that we're treating. And it's not a very emotional, experience, because most of what we're doing is very mechanical in orthopedics and in spine surgery. So I don't really get very emotional ever, but you see these kids that are the size of your kids just, completely dismembered. And it's incredibly heartbreaking. Like, I mean, you pick up a kid and put him on the gurney, like you can't help but have some reaction when you're picking up a kid that's your kid's age, and they've just suffered, a life-altering injury their life is never going to be the same again, or they're dead. I mean, these are people just like you and me, and for them to just constantly, know that their kid could be shot, that their relative could be shot, that they themselves could be shot, or blown up. It's really it's hard to put into words.
You mentioned that in this first trip, there were people staying on the campus of the hospital, basically because the thought was this place may be safer for us. Was part of the safety the fact that you were there? Americans were there?
100%. A number of the doctors and hospital staff there told us that when they were very cognizant of which teams are on the ground and if there's foreign aid workers, because they're like, the minute you guys leave, our likelihood of getting invaded goes way up. And they actually told us that, like, if there is an invasion of the hospital, they're going to immediately take off their scrubs and put on street clothes, because, having scrubs on made you more of a target.
Well, why?
There were so many instances where physicians were killed or kidnapped that everyone knew that, I think, I know it's controversial to say in the US, but there is no question in their minds that one of the goals of the war is to destroy life in Gaza. And by taking away healthcare providers and the avenue to obtain care when someone's injured, it can more effectively lead to more death and less people to worry about. And so that is a very real understanding of a lot of these, hospital workers, aid workers, hospital staff and doctors. That's why, you have to have such a high level of respect for these people that are refusing to, just give up, and they continue to work in the hospital, and they're like, we know we're at risk, but we have the skills. And if we have the ability to help people, it's incumbent on us to do so. One of the docs that we work with a lot, he went to medical school in Turkey. And so he was able to move his wife and kids to Turkey, but he's going to stay. And he was just like, if they give us evacuation orders, we have to think about it. Like, are we going to evacuate? Like, if the evacuation does lead to a lot of people moving, you follow that movement. But if there's a lot of people staying, he's like, I'm just going to stay and continue to work until, whatever happens.
When we come back, what Adil saw in Gaza when he returned.
At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner. However you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running is all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Listen to Washington Wise, an original podcast for investors from Charles Schwab, to hear the stories making news in Washington right now. Host Mike Townsend, Charles Schwab's managing director for legislative and regulatory affairs, takes a nonpartisan look at the stories that matter most to investors, including policy initiatives for retirement savings, taxes and trade, inflation concerns, the Federal Reserve, and how regulatory developments can affect companies, sectors, and even the entire market. Mike and his guests offer their perspective on how policy changes could affect what you do with your portfolio. Download the latest episode and follow at schwab.com/WashingtonWise, or wherever you listen.
Doug.
Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu, is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
On Adil's latest trips, he's wound up in Al Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza City. But that's meant going north. Getting there meant multiple checkpoints. He describes the eeriness of one of them, where he was greeted not by soldiers, but by drones, which swooped over his group, checking their passports, their bags.
The amount that you're able to bring in is significantly limited. I know some prior teams, we didn't have this experience, but some prior teams have had, baby formula dumped out. People have been turned around for bringing in a number of these butterfly ultrasounds that they use in the ER to look for internal bleeding. I guess they're designated dual use according to some of the checkpoint staff. So they'll just take them away.
Like they could be a weapon.
Yeah. But I'm not sure. They're completely blunt, tools. They're electronic equipment. I don't know what you would use them for, but I guess they've been designated dual use. So you're not supposed to bring those. But I know a number of ER doctors that have brought them and gotten them in because no one checked. So
how did the lack of supplies impact the work you were able to do in the hospital?
It has a huge impact. The nature of injuries up north were also much more intense, and the destruction was much more intense. So like when we got up to the northern part, and we're in Gaza City, which is not far north. It's like it's like kind of north central. But it was complete destruction. I mean, that was what struck you the most. Like I remember taking a picture outside, because I walked outside of the hospital entry, and you just take a picture of the surrounding area, and it was desolate. Like, I mean, so many buildings destroyed. It looked like a scene from a sci-fi film, just post-apocalyptic. Like everything's destroyed. And then you take a left out of the hospital, and it's just a courtyard full of graves that goes all the way into the horizon. Like, because they were using everything to mark graves, like, sticks, hospital bed heads, like the little head unit that you use on the end of the bed. At El Shifa in particular, they'd use that to kind of mark grave sites, but there's so many graves.
It's striking to hear you because you describe your first visit, which sounds chaotic, but also the hospital, the way you described it feels full of life.
Yes.
People like making camps, trying to stay safe. You're giving children candy. And then it sounds like the second, third time you return, it's the opposite. You're surrounded by death.
Oh, totally. That was the biggest thing that, there were 3 Americans, 9 Jordanians on that second trip in November. And that's what we were talking about. Like, it's just the amount of death that you experience makes it a very different trip, because the other thing was the dormitory that we stayed in, it was attached to the OR. Across the driveway was the area that they did Friday prayer, and they also had on the corner of that, they had an area where they prepared the bodies for burial. And so they would just line up dead bodies throughout it was throughout the day and night, but the bombing really, and the injuries would intensify at certain times of day, like usually right at dusk and dawn. And the amount of bodies that would roll in was shocking. They would literally just stack the bodies on top of each other, wrapped in blankets, and they would just carry them out. And then like they would try to open the top so people could see the face and like say a prayer. But I just remember seeing so many kids' bodies with intestines coming out, like they're just unrecognizable, like collections of flesh. And it was just very shocking to see the amount of destruction on that trip. And a lot of the injuries that we were seeing were blast injuries. Almost everything was a drone strike or an airstrike. And that's what was different on this trip.
You're saying in August?
Yeah, this time in August of 2025, because the drone strikes and airstrikes were still there, but the intensity of gunshot wounds had shot way back up because the aid distribution had switched over to this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation entity. And I think everyone just would recognize that these were killing fields. Like, I mean, they would advise everyone not to go, but people would still go. And with the amount of gunshot injuries was crazy, because it would be a direct correlation. Like, I remember the day that I arrived, one of the ER doctors told us that if you're lucky, there's not going to be any aid distribution. If you're unlucky, the ER is going to overflow. And he was 100% right. Like, every time there was an aid distribution, people would just start pouring in. They'd put patients on the floor, and you literally had to walk over patients to get around the ER.
That's insane, because aid is supposed to help people.
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of back and forth in the discourse here in the U.S. about how that aid distribution is going. But as far as we're concerned, when you're there, there's no question that injuries are pouring in from these aid distribution sites. Like, it's you are treating things in ways that you would not expect to treat a fracture. So we're doing a lot of definitive external fixation, which is kind of unique.
What does that mean?
So external fixators are very commonly used in a trauma setting. It's what we call damage control orthopedics.
It's like a brace?
No, it's pins that go into the bone with a bar connecting them. So you're stabilizing the fracture.
But you can see it. It's on the outside.
It's on the outside of the skin. Yeah. So the pin just goes into the bone, and then it sticks outside of the skin, and then you connect a bar with some bolts to the actual pins. And so that is commonly used in trauma settings, even here in the States. But usually once the soft tissues calm down, then you go do definitive fixation, like a plate or an intramedullary nail, like a nail going down the shaft of the bone for long bones. That's usually the definitive fixation, because then people can weight bear right away. Here, we're using external fixators as definitive fixation because that patient probably isn't going to make it back to the OR for any other type of fixation at all.
So that means people are walking around Gaza with like pins and bars attached to them?
Totally. I mean, that was one of the things that struck me. Even little kids, like, I mean, you see these toddlers, 18 months old. Like, I mean, these little kids have this hardware sticking out of their forearm or out of their leg. And it's pretty bad because there's a higher risk of infection external to, with an external system. And then they're growing too. And so it's just like you have these kids, a whole generation of kids that are, either have these amputations or these terrible injuries, and they may or may not come back to have the fracture treated in a different way. They're literally taking external fixators off of patients that have died and reprocessing them.
Whoa.
One of the first cases that we did when we came in this time was somebody who was hit with a tank shell at a aid distribution site. And I mean, he had 3 out of 4 limbs amputated. And then his left arm, we were putting an external fixator on. He ended up dying in the operating room at the tail end of the case, unfortunately, just with all these injuries. But that was one of the things that one of the doctors there was saying, like, if you got 2 limbs that are getting amputated traumatically, you're probably going to make it. If it's 3 limbs, they're unlikely to survive. And that was the case with this patient. But they took that external fixator off before, taking the body out so that they could reprocess it and use it for someone else.
I know that you've spoken before, too, about how hunger is impacting the work you can do, because when you're malnourished, your bones aren't as strong and you can't recover as quickly. I hadn't even thought about that layer of things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, nutrition is an incredibly important part of healing anything, the fractures or the skin. And so we were seeing pretty dramatic infections before, way earlier than you would ever expect to see an infection normally. The malnutrition affects people at every level. A lot of the staff that we worked with have lost an incredible amount of weight. Like, they would show us pictures of what they used to look like. And now, so many people would report that they've lost 30 kilos, 40 kilos.
Well, imagine you're seeing people, like, you've seen them in one trip and then you see them in the next trip. They must look different.
They look totally different. I mean, their cheeks are sunken in. It's a completely different appearance. Because everybody comes in for a hug. Like, I mean, that's part of their culture, is like, there's a lot of hugging. And so you can feel when you give people a hug, like, you can feel their ribs, you can feel their spinous processes. And I mean, you know that they're losing weight.
How did you eat?
We ate 1 meal a day. There was no meat. So everybody in our group lost about 10 to 15 pounds. I lost about 15. I'm a little bit bigger, but everybody lost about 10 to 15 pounds.
Over how long?
3 weeks.
Huh. That's a lot of weight for 3 weeks.
Some of it's water weight, like, we're drinking out of life straws just to make sure that we don't get sick from the water. But there's definitely, like, with no meat and just eating one meal a day, like, you can lose weight pretty fast. It's kind of like going keto.
I read an interview where you said the hard part of traveling to Gaza for work isn't going, it's coming home. Why do you say that?
I mean, I think when you're there, you realize, just depending on where you were born or where you live, your life can be vastly different. You get that feeling a little bit whenever you go on any of these mission trips, but in Gaza in particular, it's further impacted by the reality that these people, there's a good chance that they could be gone the next time you may be able to go. And, just the reality that they're legitimately being hunted or ethnically cleansed from their environment. It just hits you hard that, like, these people could not be there, and next time you're able to go. There's not a hospital in Gaza that has not been attacked. Everyone is at risk of, dying. But I think the people still working in the hospital are safer than the general public to some degree. But not a single person that we work with has not lost significant parts of their family. So, like, literally every person that you work with tells you how many. They won't tell you unless you ask them. They've all lost multiple family members, and that's what's striking. Is, like, at the end of the conversation, they just say, alhamdulillah, or, like, what we say, God is great, because they're like, we can't control it. They're in a better place, but that's what hits you so hard.
You must want to, like, take them all with you when you leave.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And you're leaving them behind, and you're getting out. We were joking around. This time there were a lot more close calls than on the previous 2 trips. There was a lot of strikes right in the neighboring neighborhood in Zaytun, right outside the hospital. And but yes, there were a few close calls, but you have to kind of accept that that's the environment that you're going into. But the people that are there, they always make a good point. They're like, if you hear the bomb, that one's not meant for you. It's the bomb that you don't hear that was meant for you. So, like, whenever a bomb goes off, it's a mixture of some people saying a prayer, saying, like, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, and then there's a good number of people that just laugh, like, when a bomb goes off. It's like, what can you do?
You've been to Gaza 3 times. Do you think there's going to be a 4th trip?
Yes. So I have every intention of going back. I really hope there's a Gaza to go back to. This trip, more than any other, I think there was this sense of the end game where a lot of people feel that they're just going to get pushed off their land, or they're going to die if they're part of the group that refuses to leave. And unfortunately, from an international perspective, I don't see anything optimistic. All these, ICJ, ICC things, international pressure, none of it has really seemed to stop any of this. And so there's a real concern that, there may not be anything to go back to, but I have every intention to try.
Adil, I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time.
Mohammed Adil Khalil is a minimally invasive and complex spinal surgeon with Texas Metroplex Institute for Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Surgery. He's been to Gaza 3 times to treat the injured and the wounded. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. Paige Osburn is the senior supervising producer of What Next and What Next TBD. Mia Lobel is the head of audio here at Slate. Ben Richmond is the senior director of podcast operations. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. Say hello. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time. Decisions made in Washington can affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Washington Wise is an original podcast from Charles Schwab that unpacks the stories making news in Washington right now and how they may affect your finances and portfolio. Listen at schwab.com/WashingtonWise.